A top free agent doesn't seem to be signing with WWE, and it sounds like WWE wasn't interested. There's obviously conflicting reports, so we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. And as always, I'm going to put the timestamps down below. But shout out to Fightful. Fightful Select has dropped a ton of news surrounding this Vince McMahon takeover. And honestly, things are kind of crazy, especially when you look at this merger being done with the UFC. So Ademi LLP is a law firm that is investigating the WWE, and they announced that they are investigating whether or not WWE obtained fair price in its transaction with Endeavor. Fightful also posted the release, like the press release from the law firm, and basically, as of yesterday, Ademi LLP is investigating WWE for possible breaches of fiduciary duty and other violations of law in its transaction with Endeavor. They allege that WWE's financial outlook and prospects are excellent, and yet the transaction values WWE shares at only approximately $106 per share before any post-closing dividend. With Endeavor holding a 51% controlling interest in the new company and existing WWE shareholders holding a 49% interest in the new company. The transaction agreement unreasonably limits competing bids for WWE by imposing a significant penalty if WWE accepts a superior bid. WWE insiders will receive substantial benefits as part of change of control arrangements. They are investigating the conduct of WWE's board of directors and whether or not they are, one, fulfilling their fiduciary duties as shareholders, to all shareholders, and then two, obtaining a fair and reasonable price for WWE. This is interesting for a lot of reasons. Technically, the merger isn't 100,000% complete, right? You know, with these mergers and things like that, we've seen mergers actually not go through due to regulators not allowing things to go through. And obviously, a lot of fans right now are just hoping that this doesn't go through for a lot of reasons. This is something to definitely pay attention to. And if we get any updates, I'm sure as I podcast more in the future about this scenario, I'm sure I'll be able to provide that update for you guys. Guys, there's more that could be said about Vince McMahon and everything that's happening in the WWE. I actually kind of want to talk to you guys a little bit about LA Knight, because this is super strange. And man, it just seems like WWE, and this was one of the big things that we were complaining about on the post show, right? Like Shane McMahon coming in and being a surprise. No LA Knight, no match for Bobby Lashley. No Bray Wyatt, you know, like it was just a really weird scenario. It was one of the things that we were criticizing the most about the build, and then only for them to not do something about it. Now Worked Wrestling, who we've seen drop various tweets confirming big things that have happened in backstage environments across wrestling. They've reported that LA Knight was slated to do a segment with Lashley on the second night of WrestleMania 39, but that segment was nixed. It's unclear what happened. It should be noted that Knight had stated that WrestleMania would be getting an LA Knight moment. Now, obviously, a lot of people were wondering what the hell was going on with LA Knight and why were the plans changed. But now that we know that Vince McMahon and the WWE are merging with Endeavor, I'm starting to wonder if WWE does not see the value in LA Knight. And man, I try to be optimistic, especially with the whole move with Endeavor and everything that we have seen thus far, but it is hard to ignore the fact that LA Knight was able to get over beyond the Max Dupree gimmick, which we all know Vince McMahon wanted LA Knight to be a manager, not to be a wrestler. This is where our criticism of Vince McMahon, I believe, is valid. When you look at LA Knight, expected to be on WrestleMania, Night 2, only to not be used, only for Shane McMahon to be used, something about it seemed fishy. Something about it did not seem right. Something about it just seemed odd. And quite honestly, guys, it is something that I will not understand. I do want to point out that I think LA Knight is a hell of a talent. We're going to go into Friday Night SmackDown. We're going to find out if Vince McMahon is calling the show or not. Maybe he was just in Los Angeles and that's why he was doing Raw. Who knows, right? But we're going to go to SmackDown and we're going to see what happens with SmackDown. And if Triple H is involved 100%, I think we'll see LA Knight. If Vince McMahon is involved, to be honest, I don't think so. And it just seems like such an idiotic idea considering the fact that LA Knight, who, by the way, the pitch black match, while wrestling is subjective, I think a lot of people are pissed off about that. And yet, for some reason, LA Knight was able to survive that, which most people who go into a feud with Bray Wyatt don't end up surviving it. It's a really big struggle after that. And he was still able to get over. So this is a very big scenario that WWE, I think they don't want to be involved in. I think if you're the WWE, you do not want to be involved in a scenario where you have talent who are getting over only for Vince McMahon to not want to push you and not do anything with you. So Friday Night SmackDown is going to be really interesting for that reason. But LA Knight was planned for WrestleMania Night 2. For some reason, they nixed the plans, and that is absolutely idiotic. And guys, really what this comes down to is some stuff that Fightful was talking about. So in the new report, Fightful says that they've heard at least 2 talent, including one near the top of the card, that said they will likely request their releases if this is a trend moving forward, and another that said they'll just ride out their deal. There are multiple wrestlers who are already exploring what their options would be in the event that Vince McMahon were to steadily be involved. Now, the thing is, you can like AEW, like Impact, you can hate Impact, you can hate AEW. You can watch them, not watch them. But this is exactly why, for years, since 2019, I have talked about why it's important that more companies exist. It's important that indie wrestling is successful. It's important that the wrestling industry in general pays wrestlers fairly well. This is exactly why. Talent not wanting to be in WWE, top talent near the card, who are willing to potentially ask for their release or say, you know what? I'm going to write out my deal. And the sad thing is, if you look at the UFC and what they've become under Endeavor, the realistic truth here is that more than likely WWE would have zero issue with them walking out. There are tons of WWE talent who reportedly don't want to be there now. If this continues, I can understand why. We're all jumping the gun. We're all reacting relatively quickly. There's a lot of reports and a lot of things going on, but I do have to say Sean Ross Sapp and Fightful has done a really good job with the accuracy of their reports. There's a reason why so many people trust Fightful, and rightfully so. They've been hard at work. You know, Sean's been hard at work with all of this. And to me, when I just see that talent are already sick and tired of WWE, I don't blame them. You know, especially when we just learned the other day that there was reports of Drew McIntyre possibly not closing in on a deal. And then what makes it incredibly strange is that right now, as it stands, WWE is reportedly not expected to sign Jay White. So this is where things get a little bit crazy. The other day we made a video, Give Me Sport and Wrestle Votes. Basically, we're talking about how WWE had a growing belief system, right? That Jay White would become part of WWE. In that initial report, it was said that WWE was going to, was telling their staff, hey, like start coming up with ideas for how we can utilize him on TV. Now it comes out, according to PW Insider Elite, that there was no discussion for New Japan Pro Wrestling's Jay White within WWE at all this past weekend for WrestleMania 39. It was added that based on multiple conversations with WWE officials and talents, we are told it does not appear White is WWE bound. It's unclear whether White will sign with AEW or if he will consider going somewhere else with WWE no longer being a factor for now. Now, if you guys watch my content, I've been saying for a minute that Jay White is a hell of a talent, and I have no problem with wherever he chooses to go, but I want Jay White to go into a company feeling like a big deal. And it's crazy that WWE did not even consider making this move. They didn't. I don't know. As a fan looking from the outside looking in, I think Jay White is a great name to have on your roster. If I'm Tony Khan, if I'm Vince McMahon, if I'm Triple H, if I'm Scott D'Amore, I'm looking at Jay White as somebody where I can build my brand around him. Now, maybe some people might not agree with that, and that's fine. Maybe you wouldn't do that. That's completely fine. But I think he's a great talent, and I think he could be great in America. I think him leaving New Japan can be a really silly decision if AEW and WWE don't pick him up, right? So there obviously had to be a little confidence that he can be coming to WWE or AEW. Now WWE doesn't want Jay White, but also if I was Jay White, I don't know if I'd want to be in WWE right now. That's the reality. The reality is I don't know if I'd want to be in WWE right now. But again, if you look at Endeavor and UFC, top guys don't want to stay in UFC. They want to fight and they want to get paid and they want health insurance and they want all these things. And guess what? Because the MMA industry is so healthy, because there are companies like Bellator and companies like ONE FC and companies like PFL, MMA fighters can go and leave the UFC and go do other things. UFC fighters can leave the UFC and get into professional boxing and make a lot of money. So I do get criticized for praising Logan and Jake Paul when it comes to the boxing stuff, but that in its own has already been a massive win for combat sports. That's why whether I like or hate AEW or like it today and hate it tomorrow, that's my own personal opinion. How I watch wrestling is my own personal opinion. What I like and dislike, that really doesn't matter. But what matters is it's important that AEW and Impact and GCW and MLW and all these companies that exist do good so they can sign top free agents. So top free agents are given the opportunity to go into that company and make money. And the reality is, if WWE wasn't willing to really consider bringing in Jay White, then either WWE knew exactly what was going down with this merger, or maybe other people started to get the idea as well. And maybe that, obviously we're not talking to Jay White here, but if PW Insider is correct, then maybe WWE wasn't interested. Maybe Vince McMahon didn't want Jay White. And maybe Jay White really wasn't in talks with WWE, as previous reports said. And if that's the case, that's fine. That's fine. At least the industry is healthy enough where other people can go and find other places to work and make money. That's how I look at it. But I don't think WWE, if Vince McMahon is truly running the WWE, I highly doubt they are going to be a true destination for free agents. And that, my friends, is a very big mistake. Whether you like or hate Triple H, I think the likelihood is increased so much more under Triple H than Vince McMahon. And I guess we're going to find out what happens. So let me know what you guys think down below.